Today I am speaking with Christine Burns. I am Daniela Dragomir. I am an executive coach, and coaching is my passion. I support leaders to transform their lives from overwhelmed to easy success, overlasting joy. Christine, she is an HR specialist consultant. She has an extensive background in HR. And most recently, she got interested in artificial intelligence. And she is going to give us some tips today on how to use artificial intelligence in coaching. I am very excited about this topic. I'm very curious to know how to extend my business, how to support my business with AI. This is the hot new topic that everybody's talking about, and I think it has a huge potential for the coaching business. So, Christine, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Cool. Hi, Danielle. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, so as Daniela said, I started Loom Talent back in 2023. I have a long career in HR. And one of the things that I became very interested in was how artificial intelligence was going to influence human resources and human resources functions. And as Danielle and I were networking, she started to tell me about her coaching business and was thinking about like some of the frustrations she was having or some of the obstacles she was facing. And suddenly I thought to myself, artificial intelligence could help with a bit of this. So that's really the genesis of this conversation and where this is coming from. So I'm super excited to talk about it. I think it's going to be extremely helpful for a lot of people who are trying to start any business, right? And we'll talk a bit today about the ways that you can apply artificial intelligence to your business in a way that will help you grow your pipeline, make your life more efficient, make your scheduling more efficient. So I'm really excited to share these tips today.
Wow, that is a lot that you share there. I cannot wait to take it bit by bit. First of all, maybe we should share that we first connected while we were working at Ernst& Young back in the day. I know how competent you are, your extensive experience in the HR world. So I'm very excited about this. So, Christine, what is artificial intelligence? There's so many things floating around out there. So, what is your view on this?
Yeah, so I do think it's really important we start by describing what AI is. So AI, for those of you who don't know, is short for artificial intelligence. It's kind of like teaching a computer to think and learn like humans do. Imagine if you could like program a computer to recognize your voice, suggest your favorite songs, or even play chess. And they get better each time. That's really what artificial intelligence is, and that's what it is in action. So AI is basically like a cool mix of computer science, engineering, and a sprinkle of like human-like reasoning that helps machines be really, really smart, right? So there's sometimes a little bit confusion around all the different types of AI. So I think one thing that we should do is just spend a little time describing some of the different components and the different things that make up AI. So imagine AI as the top of the umbrella, right? And underneath this umbrella, there's all different types of artificial intelligence. So we'll start, with a few that you're probably really familiar with. NLP, standing for natural language processing. Surprisingly, you guys, everyone is using this every day. Examples of this are voice assist like Siri, your spell checking, even any kind of chatbots, or if you're in a different country and you're using a translation service, this is what is defined as natural language processing. Another one is machine learning. So any kind of recommendation service is an example of AI. So for example, you're watching Netflix and it says, hey, do you want to watch the next Peppa Pig episode? That is an example of at machine learning. Or, you're on Spotify and all of a sudden it says, you want to listen to Bruno Mars. I don't know how that got there, but that's another example of machine learning. And even like Google Maps, right? When you say, hey, I want to go someplace and it predicts how long it's going to take you, that is an example of machine learning. So another application of artificial intelligence in your everyday life. Another one, computer vision, just like it sounds, it's the ability of computers to actually see. So the iPhone, when it uses facial recognition, this is an example. Self-driving cars using computer vision, or we hope so, and it's doing it well. And then, there's so many examples of this, but expert systems is like the concept of marrying knowledge and rules. So when a bank automatically decides whether you get approved for a credit card, that's expert systems. And then robotics, that's how robots are helping put together cars, or how robots are helping you with your iRobot vacuum, right? These are examples of artificial intelligence in the robotics world. So this is a super simplified version of AI, and the different ways that they're incorporated to things that you consume today. So you might be saying to yourself, Daniela, great, that all sounds awesome, but how am I applying that really to my coaching business?
Yeah, so thank you so much for this summary. What I heard you say is that AI is not really the hottest new thing. Facebook has been making recommendations for me 10 years ago, or I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
I would Google something on Google, and then Facebook will show me an ad about that product. So it's been around for a long time. It's not really the new thing. It's just maybe now it's more, maybe before was used by bigger companies, but now it's more accessible to everyone. So
Yeah, that's exactly the point. The technology is way more accessible to us. And I think the thing that really put us to this precipice where we are today is ChatGPT. So if artificial intelligence actually goes back to the 1950s, it isn't new. The first time we made computers and we taught it to do math, this is a type of an artificial intelligence, right? So anything that is a machine doing the job that a human could do, that is an example of artificial intelligence. And you said this perfectly, Daniela, is it's the fact that it's more accessible to us today. So now people are owning technology, creating software that leverages this type of intelligence in order to make our lives better, faster, stronger, or change the way that processes are done. And that's really where I got excited when I started my business, was to think about like, okay, how will this change the human resources field in general? But I think really on our day to day and in our personal businesses, this is going to be a game changer.
yes, and I think the component that it's really interesting and change things is the fact that we can give it our own voice, because so far it was a computer, it was impersonal, but now we can give it our own voice. And to be honest, I still have challenges with that.
Yeah.
I still find ChatGPT spewing back at me things that I don't quite relate to. So this is where I need your help. So how can I use AI in my business, Christine?
Sure. I do want to make a caveat before we go there that nothing I'm talking about today is a cut and paste experience, right? And like you said, the language that you're getting back from using ChatGPT is not going to be reflective of your own. We are not at the point where you have your personal ChatGPT where you, Daniela, can, train it to sound like Daniela. That is absolutely coming, but we are not there yet, right? So the way that you're using it today, I want to really be clear that you need to equate AI as to your favorite intern, right? You know that the work product they're providing you is absolutely the best they possibly could do with the information and the knowledge they have. But they are young, they are not you, right? And so, really, it is important that I emphasize that you must review and you must refine before you start using the content that Chat GPT or any AI is giving you. Does that make sense?
Oh my God, I love that analogy. ChatGPT is my intern. I love it. And I feel
It is.
all of a
And
sudden more important.
your
My
favorite
intern.
intern. Your favorite intern. It is going to schedule for you. It is going to write you content. It is going to do all sorts of great things for you. So let's jump into it. You asked me,
Yeah.
how can I use AI in my coaching business? So there's four different things I'm going to cover today that I think is important to people who are running a coaching business. One, I think, is content creation. The second is business development. The third is how can you actually use it during your session with your client? And four, how you're going to use it post, right? So why don't we jump into content creation? So as an entrepreneur myself, I know that creating like interesting and good looking, meaningful content is incredibly important to building my brand, right? And so as a
Credibility. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
absolutely, right? Like how important would you say your brand is, Daniela, in the market when you're trying to get clients?
it's very important. I mean, if I send something to a client and looks shabby, not the graphics don't look good, the grammar, they're not gonna take me seriously. So yeah, it's very
Yeah.
important.
And I think there's a piece about personalization, right? Like the fact of who you are trying to attract as your clientele base. So I would argue we all have different target markets, right? When it comes to coaching. And it's incredibly important to have that message attract that specific target market. I remember when you and I first started talking, you said, my network is full of this type of clientele, but honestly, I feel like I do better with this type of clientele. And so you want to start thinking about how your content is resonating with the target audience that you're really trying to go for, right? And so, for instance, if you're trying to attract somebody who wants, coaching in a tech startup world, you might probably use words like innovation or rapid growth or agility, right? All of those words we know to be very to resonate in the tech world. But if you are, looking for clients in the healthcare industry, you might want to start using words like empathy, healthcare, regulations, right? Things that resonate better there. So there's a lot of ways to use ChatGPT to help create materials as well as help you brainstorm. What are the words that are going to resonate? What are the hashtags that I want to use that are going to get the attention of the target audience that I'm looking for? And I use these on LinkedIn. I use these on social media platforms such as Instagram. And the more that I create my content using these types of words, the more success I've had bringing clients on that are in my wheelhouse. Does that make sense?
Oh wow! So you just said two very important things there. One is you can ask ChatGPT about the words that click with a specific field with the people who are in a specific field. So I can
Yeah,
ask ChatGPT that, and it's gonna give me the words. Is that what you're saying?
I am
Wow.
saying that.
And the next one is that I can ask and use those words as hashtags in my postings, or ask another prompt about which are the most popular hashtags in that field.
Yeah, either or, right? Like I am not a marketing guru, so I don't know which one works the best. But what I do know is that instead of me finding myself pulling on the same words over and over again, or not knowing even what words to use, I use ChatGPT as my brainstorming sounding board to really say, I'll use and so I'll give an example. I will
Yeah.
use a prompt. I like tech startup. That's where I want to be. And so when I write a LinkedIn post, I say, I'm writing a LinkedIn post about this topic. I'm targeting COOs and founders of startups. Using the LinkedIn algorithm, please give me some suggestions for a few hashtags that might bring attention to my post. Does that make sense?
It does, and I like how you are polite with ChatGPT. Please give me some hashtags. We have to treat our intern well, right?
You have to be nice to everyone. Yes, you have to treat your intern well. And so another thing, like in the content space, right, is blog posts, articles. I'm not sure if you're engaging in this. Are you using blog posts and articles in your business?
I want to. So this is my next step. So I was hoping to after our discussion today to get some tips on how to get myself organized and start doing these things so they don't seem as overwhelming, because I want to create more content for my social media, for blogs, articles, but it seems like a daunting task. But if I have a starting point with some, some words, some maybe an outline, it'll make my life easier. So yeah.
And you've nailed it on the head, Daniela. Like, you can use ChatGPT as an outlining tool. It will even create the content for you. I do not suggest doing that. And there is a lot of talk out there about ChatGPT recreating very similar content over and over again, right? So you don't, as I said in the beginning of this is not a copy paste activity, right? You want to make sure that it is in your voice. But when we get to talking about the prompts and what's important about the way that you query ChatGPT, it'll become much more clear that there are ways to make this much more in your voice, right? But when it comes to blog posts and articles, right, I truly believe that thought leadership can be a really compelling way to attract new followers and be seen as a thought leader in the space. So having a fresh and unique perspective can be extremely difficult, especially if you find yourself that you're writing too often, or you in general suffer from writer's block. I tend to find myself writing a blog in a Word document. I get writer's fatigue, and then I walk away. I'm exhausted. I'm frustrated. And I'm pretty much left staring at a blank page with a couple of words on it. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So using ChatGPT, it's really helped me to build upon my already crafted idea. It's helped serve as an outline for what I'm trying to convey. With a few great queries, I've found myself able to create content quickly using language that's more compelling than it would be if I was using my own vocabulary. So, I'm from New York City. I have a very distinct vocabulary. I pull on it over and over again. And I think we all have this problem, right? Which is you have a select few anchor words that you use all the time. But ChatGPT's really changed that for me. You can ask ChatGPT to be verbose and use words that you would never use. You can ask it to be scholarly. You can ask it to be conversational in tone, right? So, and by playing with ChatGPT in this way, I've expanded my vocabulary, especially in my blog posts and my online content, in a way that I think makes it more engaging than my normal tone that I would use on a regular basis.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting. So, well, so how long is this process in finding what was the road for you? Uh, ChatGPT, the standard one, and then you want to use to actually do a blog post. What is the process for you? A blog post with the search
Sure.
flow.
Yeah, that's a great question. So usually I'm walking around or cooking or doing something mundane with my life, and I'll be having a conversation with myself and thinking to myself, what's the next thing I want to think about, or what's the next thing I want to post about. And I'll take one that I posted about recently, and I wanted to talk about why AI was not going to replace human resources jobs. I really truly believe that AI is only going to replace your job if you are actively resistant of it. But if you proactively take it on, I think that, HR, AI is going to be your best friend, right, in the HR space, making you more productive and more efficient. And so that's the tagline, right, of my blog post. And I know that, but to organize my thoughts in a way that we're able to write a blog post of a certain amount of letters and characters and exactly what I want it to be just seemed overwhelming. And so I put it aside, I put it aside, I put it aside. And so finally I said, well, I'm talking about ChatGPT, but I'm not using it. So I sat down and I said to ChatGPT, I want to write an article about how I believe AI is not going to replace HR jobs, but instead is going to be the most useful. Can you help me write an outline of 1,000-word blog post? I'd like it to be 3 to 4 paragraphs long. I'd like the beginning to talk about X. I'd like the body to talk about 3 specific things that are convincing to people why. So that be, what is the challenges we have today? What is the opportunities? How do I apply them? And a conclusion. 10 seconds later, yep, absolutely ready to do that for you. So now I have my outline, go into a Word document, and I start to write. 1,000,000 times easier because now the brain's flowing. And sometimes I agree with what ChatGPT is saying, and I say, this is great. I can build upon this. I have thoughts that are absolutely mirroring what ChatGPT is saying. And then maybe I get to the second paragraph and I'm like, I don't like that. So I go back to ChatGPT and I say, on the above post, you suggested writing about this. I think I'd rather write about that. And it will change the outline to be able to show that it has thought differently about that. And every time I get a new response, my brain is firing on all cylinders. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, that, not that. You know what? And so it's become just an amazing brainstorming agent.
Oh, wow. That is so amazing how you take what it gives you and of course, it prompts you to, some things you haven't thought about, some things you thought about, but it prompts you to think in a different way. And it's like a conversation, like a back and forth. And because I was using it more statically, like, okay, give me this, I'll get something. I'll be like, oh, it sounds too dry for me. I'm not going to use it. But this is, yeah, it's like a conversation back and
Yeah.
forth on this paragraph and refining the writing. Wow. And how long is, for example, this process as opposed to a normal process of writing?
So I think it's going to vary for everyone, right? I don't want to necessarily guarantee. For me, myself, and my brain is constantly on. I write a list of myself of topics that I've always wanted to talk about. From the time I put the topic in, so this is sans thinking about the topic or coming up with it. But by the time I put the topic in and want to finish a full blog post, I'm doing that in about an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with it. And I'm happy with the outcome. That means I've done all the brainstorming, written, putting it back into ChatGPT to clean up the grammar, the tone, maybe make it shorter, maybe expand on some things, and it can be on social media in about an hour. For a social media post, like something that might just be a quote with some caption underneath, I can do that in about 20 minutes.
Oh. Well, I know you. You're very productive. You're very succinct, on point. You're very you work fast. So it's no wonder. Maybe for me, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's still amazing. I think what's important, what you expressed there, is the fact that it's a partner in this, and you don't need to get stuck and ruminate over a topic that sometimes in my head it goes around for days, and in the end I don't even sit down because it seems too overwhelming. So
Yeah.
I think this is what the key there is. Really, it helps you get the thing done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd encourage you, when that idea comes to you, just write it down and walk away from it, right? And think about, I'm going to throw this in Chat GPT later. I'm going to start to like really think about what it is I'm trying to say. What am I trying to convey? Being able to provide ChatGPT with the overall, what is the point you're trying to land, and working backwards, I find to be a really good process to get to where you want to be.
Oh, wow. So intention, like in coaching, what is your intention? Is
What
very
is your
important. What is your intention? What is the point you want to drive? Wow, that is amazing. So, what are some other ways to use artificial intelligence aside from blog posts and articles?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I focus a lot on Chat GPT, but you know, there's a ton of businesses out there that are using um, artificial intelligence for business development purposes. Now, I caveat this again with, I am not an expert in marketing. I'm not somebody who necessarily uses these technologies. But when we were starting this conversation, I really wanted to think about, you know, what were some ways that we could think differently, or some suggestions around how to use artificial intelligence in growing that pipeline or finding your clients or business development. So what I'm going to talk about is really based on relationships I have with people who are in this space, and also some research I've done on technology, right? So the first one I want to start with is talking about chatbots, right? So chatbots, I think we're all familiar. You get onto a website, a chatbot pops up, right? But we have not seen this really come into personal businesses so much yet, right? But chatbots are going to be really, they're, first of all, they've become much more affordable. So if you look at companies like Zendesk, Drift, Intercom, these are companies that for $20 to about $40 a month, you have a plug-in into your coaching website, and you're able then to use that to interact with people who actually get to your website. So, you know, someone who might click with a chat with me, Daniela, your picture shows up and a chatbot shows up, and you can actually program the chatbots to have responses that are in your tone, and that really showcase really how you want to have that relationship, even though you're not actually there at that time or able to talk to that person. So, you know, while it's a fabricated conversation, it can really show your offering, it can show your style, and it can lead them to automatic scheduling, right? Which I think is that instantaneous ability for me to go to your website, say, I think I really like what Daniela is offering. And it says, you know, 15-minute call with Daniela, and I can go right there. Now, some might say, why is that different from calendaring? Sure, it is, because there is one less click. There is one more human type interaction that is luring them to go and click. Today, they have to go find your calendar. It's either sitting buried in your website, buried in your email. And so this is just a different way of marketing and being much more human about it in the way that you program the chatbot.
Yeah, I love that. One of the challenges, of course, for coaches is how do you increase your pipeline? How do you have that stream of clients coming back, you know, coming to you, and you don't have to worry about. So this is a way, a chat box working for you when you are not working, let's say. So, and yeah, it's a personalized interaction because you program the chat box, although they talk with the robot, but it's also personalized. So yeah, well, I haven't thought of that, and I didn't know it became so accessible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we saw the credit card companies doing this years ago. We saw the big
Yeah.
guys all doing this, and it's very much used all the time. But you know, we're getting to that point where now people can access it for a cost that makes sense for them, right? $20 to $40 for some people, that makes sense. Another, and this is the last piece where I'll really talk about software and how people are implementing AI into their coaching businesses, but really thinking about the email marketing part of it. So, there's companies out there such as MailChimp, Constant Contact, and they, for something like $10 a month, are plugins into your email that allow you to do things like A/B testing. So if you don't know what A/B testing is, that's the concept of, I do a cold call, right? Or a cold reach out where I say, hey, are you looking for coaching? And I have an email underneath that versus meet Daniela Dragomir and I bring, joy to people. I work with people to bring joy into their life. And you can send those out and see which one did better, which one had more traffic, which one caused people to go more to your website. Really, this is about collecting data and data analytics around what you're doing in email, what you're doing in social media. So you can start to refine and understand what is actually bringing people to your business versus what's not resonating. It goes as far to even say, how long did they read your email for? Did they even scroll down anymore if you have more content? And did they even click to go to your website? So this is true business development type activities.
Oh, wow. It is very, very useful. Yeah. So what are some other ways to use in which to use artificial intelligence and
Yeah, I think the one other thing that I want to go back to ChatGPT about that we have more control over is how do you make yourself more familiar with topics that maybe you're not that familiar with. So I think we can all agree that talking intelligently about subjects that are important to people is a really important way of gaining trust and converting prospects into clients. But we're not experts in everything. We're just not. There are things I have a very deep knowledge of, and there are things that I have never really spoken about, right? So, if an engineer came to me and said, I want to use you as a coach, and I would say, I don't really know what your life looks like. I don't know the frustrations of coding. But instead of going about that, right, I can use ChatGPT as a way to educate myself about things that I may not know about. So, for instance, I have in the past gone, when I'm pitching work, gone and looked at industries that I'm not familiar with, like possibly manufacturing. If I'm going to be talking to a client around what does it look like to be sitting on the assembly line of a manufacturing plant, then I can use ChatGPT as a way to educate myself and ask it questions like, I do not have a background in manufacturing. Can you explain to me how an assembly line works, and what are some of the biggest risks to people who are assembly line workers? And it'll educate me on that. So while this kind of feels like, can't you just Google that? Sure, but then I'm skimming through articles and trying to get to the information. So if I prompt ChatGPT really well to get to the genesis of what I'm trying to understand about the topic, then I can get that information very quickly, very efficiently, and educate myself on that.
Oh, I love that. Yes, because actually, I sent some emails recently to people in different industries, and I wanted to speak about how I could support them, but I wasn't very knowledgeable about their pain points. One was a nonprofit organization. The other one was a textile company. So yeah, this is very useful information. This to help me generate some short emails, how to pitch my services.
Yeah,
Wow. Um,
I think the one thing that I'll say is that really being able to, it's really about that connection you want to make with the person that you're talking to. So I'm not suggesting that you pretend to be an expert in something that you're not, but I do say that, showing that you've taken the time to educate yourself and showing that you've even taken the time to try to understand their point of view and where they're coming from is more than most people do, right? And something that we as coaches should be doing. So, I think that this is another great use case for Chat GPT.
I think so too. Yeah, because I'm not going, as you said, we're not going to pretend we know what the client is experiencing. We can always try to see, is this, well, actually validate, is this what you're experiencing? But I think
Exactly.
it builds that first connection. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
So let's talk about, how you can really use AI during your session and post session. So I think it's really important that we recognize that being a coach is a very human thing, right? And it's not something that can be replaced by AI. But I know, at least in my own coaching practice, I've carried multiple clients. Sometimes I meet with some of them once a week. Sometimes I meet with some of them once every other week. And so, I personally do take notes and make sure that I am, recognizing and remembering what are the things that we've agreed to, what are some of the themes, what is the tone of our coaching session, and making sure that, afterwards, if somebody's looking for a bit of accountability, I'm able to say, these are the things you've committed to, right? And
Yeah.
so there's an awesome plugin for Zoom or any online thing called otter.ai. And if you've taken a Zoom call recently, then you've probably seen people use this. And you'd have to ask your client, because obviously this involves recording, but in an effort to be more present during your coaching calls, right? Otter AI will take all the notes for you. It can pull out the action items that you've agreed to. It can summarize notes for you versus summarize notes for your client. And it's just a really simple way that I have found to be more present in my meetings, right? And to make sure that I don't have to think about, oh, I need to write that down. Because when somebody's in a train of thought, it's really important that you stay there with them, right, in coaching. And so I found that Otter AI has been really great in this space.
Oh, I'm going to try this one because I've been using Fathom uh, on Zoom. So maybe this is a little bit different. With Fathom, the challenge is that it's basically a transcript, and I still have to go through it to sort out what is of interest. So Otter is actually doing um, another thing, is summarizing, is okay, I'll try it.
Yeah, I mean, give it a try, right? Like some people, and this technology is only going to get better and better. And so it's very similarly to the during the session, the post session is super, important. You could technically apply the chatbot type activity to be utilized during, in between sessions, right? For in between session needs. So let's say if you are a coach who offers on demand support, this is another place where chatbots could be used to book emergency sessions, reinforce strategies that are discussed during the sessions, or even encourage your clients to stay committed to their goals, right? So that would be another cool application of chatbots. And we talked about Otter AI, that ability to summarize for your own notes as a coach, but also to be able to pull out those action items and help your clientele stay committed to what they saw and what they thought was important during their session, I think is another really cool use of AI in your post session, activities. What I think is most important is that you have the information that you need to be the most effective coach you can be, right? So that 15 minutes as you're prepping for your next coaching session, if you can go back and it can really capture the essence of the conversation you had, well, then that's just going to make you 20 times more effective during your coaching session.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm curious a little bit more about the chatbots that could be used between sessions. For example, I would like to give my clients a reminder to stop 3 times a day and take a deep breath. Can a chatbot do that for my clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's all different ways that you can make the information flow, right? The chatbot usually means that the person needs to actually come to the portal or come to your website. So it would be definitely a thing to explore with how you've set up the information, but you could also do it via email, automated WhatsApp, or automated messages. These are all things that AI is able to do, right? And you are taking the manualness out of the sending of it, but you're also taking the manualness out of having to write it yourself each and every time, right? And this is where the productivity and efficiency come in.
Now that you're saying, I mean, I've received reminders like that, right? We all receive from the doctors, from text
Yeah.
messages. So it's absolutely doable. What other things?
So that's everything I have to share today, right? Like the 4 things that we committed to talking about was how we use AI in content creation, how we use AI in potentially in business development for our coaching practices, and a few applications of how it could be used during your session and post session. But I think one of the things that is most important about using ChatGPT, which I've mentioned before, is, using an effective prompt, right? And so what I want to cover next is really what is an effective prompt? How do you use it? How do you craft it? What are some examples of some really great prompts? What are some examples of not so great prompts? So you want to jump into what is effective prompting?
Yes, absolutely. Cool. Let's do it.
Great. Okay, so when using AI and ChatGPT specifically, effective prompts are the ones that clearly communicate the user's intentions, there's that word again, coaching, intentions, and provides enough context to effectively guide the AI's response. So as a favorite manager of mine used to always say, bad information in means bad information out. So the response you receive from ChatGPT is only going to be as good as the information you give it. So I want to cover 6 different aspects that you can use when crafting your prompt that'll make it more effective and help you get the result that you really want from the system.
I would love that. Like how can we do that? And okay. By the way, just to mention right here, all these websites and resources that you mentioned, we are going to post them in the comments of this video.
Yes,
and even these prompts.
Yep. And if anyone's interested in, having a crash course in this for their company, or, even for a group of people, Daniela and I would be happy to go ahead and host these types of sessions for people if you find them, valuable.
Of course. Yeah, let's do the prompts.
Cool. So an effective prompt. An effective prompt is, in the AI world, is one that communicates the user's intentions. It provides enough context so that the system is giving you the response you want. There's 6 different aspects that I think are generally important to when you're crafting your prompt. I am going to talk about these 6, and then I'm going to give you an example of one that's super vague, and then I'm going to give you an example of one that is better, right? And I've tried to apply these to coaching specifically. They're not perfect, but they're just, they're meant to be illustrative, right? They're meant to show what the differences are. So let's start with specificity, right? So specificity is, let's pretend I'm attempting to use ChatGPT to help me create like very tailored content, or maybe even brainstorm an exercise that I want to use with my client. I need to be extremely specific as to the coaching objectives, right? Or the issues that are being addressed for my client. So an example of a vague prompt could be, help improve my client's life. Well, let's be clear. ChatGPT doesn't know your client. ChatGPT doesn't really know how to improve a client's life, right? So if ChatGPT could do that, then all of the coaches would be out of a job, right? So let's make an example of a specific prompt. So an example would be, develop a step-by-step action plan to help a client transition from a full-time job to a freelance career within 6 months, ensuring financial stability and personal growth, right? This prompt is going to get you a much better response than the vague one I first provided, right? It tells ChatGPT what the client is trying to accomplish. It talks about a timeline and a time frame in which they'd like to do so. And it's laid out really what the client values, right? Which is financial stability and personal growth. Now, it'll give you a framework to do this. You as the coach, again, this is a brainstorming tool. This is something that you'll be able to use quicker instead of starting from nothing. The second one I want to talk about is descriptive language. So it's the use of vivid and precise language to create materials or descriptions that resonate deeply, like with your clients specifically. So this is also very much about, these are the types of things I would use when I'm thinking about my branding, right? That really descriptive type language that paints a beautiful picture, right? And guides AI more effectively. So for instance, a less descriptive prompt would be discuss your client's progress. Okay, not quite sure what that means. This is not going to give AI enough to go on. It's just not. It doesn't know your client. It doesn't know the progress it's made. But alternatively, if you want a more descriptive prompt, you might say something like, provide a detailed assessment of the client's progress in overcoming fears in public speaking, and include specific milestones achieved and areas for further improvement. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, they don't know the progress that the client has made. Taking this one step further, you could go as far as to put in your notes that you've collected from your previous coaching session into ChatGPT, giving it the context it needs to be able to make a very specific, detailed assessment of progress over time. So if I said, hey, on February 1st, Daniela did her first speaking engagement in front of one person, but in March 1st, she did her first speaking engagement in front of 10 people, it'll now know that and be able to bring that into the detailed assessment, right? And how you overcame your fears. So again, another great way to help you think about framing, positivity when you're reinforcing your client's progress.
Yeah. Let's go to the third one.
So context is really important. I just spoke a little bit about context, so this kind of dovetails really nice into this one. So context is about providing what providing context would look like incorporating the client's background, preferences, and specific life situations that make the responses more relevant and impactful. So I think we all know that creating context and having context is really important. You heard me in the earlier sessions talk about, I say things like, I am trying to create a LinkedIn article about XYZ, rather than just saying, give me contents on XYZ. Giving it the idea that I want to create a LinkedIn article, you'll notice it'll come up with emojis that are built in. Sometimes it'll already put in hashtags. It already knows what I'm trying to do, right? So the context is really important. In this example, something of less context would be create a goal setting worksheet. Great, it can create a goal setting worksheet for you, but if you gave it more context, like create a goal setting worksheet tailored for, let's say, a single parent who is balancing a full-time job and pursuing a part-time degree and focusing on time management and personal well-being, well, then it's going to give you buckets that are very specific to what it means to be a single mom who's working with time management, who wants to talk about personal well-being. And while it's, again, probably won't be perfect, it'll help you frame, hey, these are the things that are going to be more valuable to this person when we do goal setting. Fourth, I think we talk about tone and style. This is my favorite one to play with. It's really about reflecting the client's comfort level and the nature of the coaching relationship in your communication materials, right? So I have one tone that I use, in business. I have one tone I use in an interview like this. I have a completely different tone I'm using with my mother, right? And so I think we need to be more appreciative of how important.
Yeah, this is the crux of it, right? What people complain about with AI, that it doesn't take the personal tone. So I'm so curious to hear how you give it personalized.
Well, I think the most important thing in this aspect is knowing what your tone and your style are. So, you really need to know what your tone and style are. I got a lot of this information when I did a branding exercise. Asking your friends what your tone and your style are is a great way. of understanding it. But really,
Self
there's
self-awareness first.
of awareness. Yeah, there's tons of great brand and branding exercises you can do for yourself that talk about tone and style, right? And how you define it. And if you're looking for words, use Chat GPT. Like, you know, Chat GPT, I'm trying to define my tone and style. Can you use a few words that would describe my style based on this article I wrote? So if you have something that you've written that you think really encompasses and embodies you, ask ChatGPT what they think of it, right? And it'll pull out words. So, mine is, confident, persuasive. These are the words. So now that I want that to be my brand and my tone, I write that into ChatGPT every time I do a query. Tone should be X, brand should be Y, right? And it really changes the responses it gets. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So you really need to define for yourself what is your tone and your style, right? And I think the tone is one thing, the style is different, right? The style is, do I want my post to be conversational? Do I want my post to be scholarly, right? Like, who am I trying to be in this piece of work that I'm creating, right? So I think that's something to think about really closely.
So
So,
the style part, yeah, depends
yeah,
where you use the content. Yeah.
yeah. So, as an example, in this, we're applying this a concept of tone and style to coaching, right? You might say to Chat GPT, send a follow-up message after the session. Great.
Mm.
What do you want it to say? What do you want it to sound like, right? So send a more specific prompt would be send a warm and encouraging follow-up message after the session, appreciating the client's openness, during the session and gently reminding them of their next steps in their personal development plan. So this is a type of prompt that'll get you a much better reaction. Moving on to 5, purpose and intent, right? So clarifying really like what is the purpose and the intent of the output so that it actually meets your needs. This is anything from like, I don't know, like let's discuss time management, right? So if I was discussing with my client time management, I might say, let's write in some exercises to use with my client to discuss time management. Sure, you might get some generic type things, but a more clear version of this would be, conduct a focused discussion on identifying the client's primary time wasters and collaboratively establish 3 new habits to enhance productivity and free up time for personal hobbies, right? So I think getting very specific around characters, number of characters, length, how many specific points you want to really be in there. And this, dovetails into the 6th point I have, which is about length and format. So really being clear about, am I putting this content on LinkedIn? Is this a caption on social media? Do I want it to be 500 words? Do I want it to be 500 characters? Do I want it to be punchy? What am I using this for? And being very specific with ChatGPT about that is going to get you a much better result. And sometimes I'll let it do whatever it's going to do, and it'll give me so much information. I'll say, wow, this could be 3 separate, LinkedIn posts.
Oh.
And then I take those information and I change it and I give it another prompt with those smaller, sections to create even more content. So that's the 6 effective prompts for AI. And I think if you play with these and you really think about different ways of using it, you're really going to open up a whole world and be way more productive and way more efficient in creating content or anything you want ChatGPT to do.
Oh yeah, it definitely sounds like it. I mean, and again, we're gonna post these prompts in the comments for everyone to start using them, and all the links to the software we mentioned So yeah, it changed completely my view about what ChatGPT could do for me.
Great. I'm so happy. And I really appreciate you having me here today. I think it's a really useful conversation. I hope everybody else finds it really useful. And again, if anyone is interested in having us come and talk to you about how we're applying AI or how we're applying AI to our coaching, we'd be happy to do that with you.
Thank you, Christine, for a very interesting conversation today.
Thanks for having me, Daniela.